Hello, and welcome to Learning Nights by Oasis by KrASIA, and in partnership with Draper Startup House. As you can probably hear, it is chocker full here at Draper Startup House. We've got a great crew, and it looks like we've got a great crew at the other locations. So welcome to everybody else that have joined online. So just very quickly, we'll pass it on to Emily, who will do a quick intro about Oasis. So take it away, Emily.
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, yay! Thank you everyone for being our guinea pig for tonight. It is our first learning night ever. Right now, you can't see on the screen, but there are 3 locations with 8 people at each location. And you know, you're gonna learn something today and you'll meet someone new. So the whole idea behind Oasis was just really to come together, meet someone new and learn something new, something that's not work related. And that's really where Oasis came from. So yeah. So I think, I hope that you find today really fun and enjoyable. It's very informal. You're supposed to just meet new people. And especially with COVID, it's been hard to make new friends. So hopefully, you make a new friend today. Yeah. But I just want to quickly kick it off to CK from Draper Startup House. Thank you for being our partner and allowing people into your space as well.
Yep. So a bit of a shocking last minute change. We've got Sia doing the intro. So Sia, do you want to do a quick? Yeah.
The Draper Startup House. I know it's been a while since we had an event, so reintegrating back into community and everything. I just wanted to say thanks everyone for showing up. We're actually a startup hostel in the past, but with COVID, we did a huge pivot, and at the end of the day, we're still all about community over here. So we're still supporting entrepreneurs in our 9 global locations. Do check us out. Yeah, but otherwise, please enjoy the space and have a great evening. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Miina Öhman.
Okay, today I'm going to tell you about physical and mental health and how nature can improve those. And we can start with, I guess we can start. What do I use? This one?
Yeah, just press. Oh, really quickly.
Okay, all right. So you can take a look at these 2 pictures and decide that in which environment you would be rather walking and why. This busy city street or this other nature path. And if I can guess, most of you would probably rather be walking in nature. And why is this? It's because of our evolution. And, humans evolved hundreds of thousands of years ago, and we still have the same instincts and senses that because they're genetically determined, that they haven't changed. And we use these senses and instincts to our hunter-gatherer lifestyle hundreds of thousands of years ago. Right. So during the evolution, we have been able to adapt pretty much just culturally and with the technological innovation to cold and heat and dark and hunger and physical exertion. But in our body, there's 2 systems that we lack conscious awareness of, and that's the brain or the nervous system and our immune system. And because we don't have this awareness, we cannot really sense them. We have failed to seek any technological adaptation. And the nervous system and the immune system play both a big role in explaining all the consequences that modern urban llifestyle is now causing to us, and why we actually end up, can I use the pointer? We end up like this. or sort of like a lot of people end up like that. Okay, not you guys. Maybe not yet. Okay, so what is it? We have to talk about stress response. You probably have heard of fight or flight response. So during the evolution, this response was designed to save us from predators. When they attack, we either have to, running for our lives, or we have to start fighting. In modern society, something like this would be if you cross the street, then you see a car coming, and your life is at risk if you get hit by the car. So what happens in the stress response is that we get this signal to our brain, the amygdala, that is the center there that senses all the threats. And it sends down the spinal cord all these signals via the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, goes to the adrenal gland that secretes catecholamines, which are the adrenaline and noradrenaline. And then these hormones have many different effects in our body. And they're basically geared towards this fighting or flighting. So we get increased heart rate, and we get the blood pressure up because the blood vessels in the periphery are shrinking, and all the blood is going to our big muscles so we can run away or start fighting. And then we need energy, the glucose. So liver contains the storage glucose. It's called glycogen. So then with the stress response, the glycogen is cut to the smaller glucose molecule so that cells can use the glucose. So we get energy to fight or run away. And also our digestive system, it's shut down, so we don't use energy for that because we're just fighting. And then we get the maximum, breathing with the dilated bronchioles in the lungs. And then the immune system prepares us because we're going to get some wounds and maybe some pathogens to our wounds because of all the fighting or running away. So that also is geared up and prepares for the wound healing and the fighting against the pathogens. So this is all good if it happens every once in a while. It's actually, it's a boosting our system in several different ways. So this short-term stress, it's an accurate response. And what I didn't mention is there's also these beta endorphins. How can we move this somewhere? I don't know. So the beta endorphins are also secreted. These are the endorphin, the word comes from endogenous morphine. So this is the feel-good hormones, and they make us feel less pain. So if we fight or flight and get the wounds, then we are not in huge pain. In modern day society, you get these hormones, feel-good hormones. If you're like running or exercising, then people get this endorphin high. And then I said about boosting the immune system if the stress response is short. However, if we get the stress response too often and it becomes chronic, everything is reversed basically. The stress response is inaccurate, it's excessive, and we are not secreting endorphins anymore. So we are not feeling good. We can actually start feeling pain, like physical pain, even if there's nothing that has wounded us. And this increases the risk of depression. And then this continuous activation actually leads to weakening of the immune system. So we get sick more easily, and the immune cells start to fight like wrong targets. So all these different effects that I explained, like the high blood pressure, they eventually, and increased heart rate, they lead to impaired cardiovascular health down the line. And also the elevated glucose levels, you probably all know the diabetes, develops when you have high glucose levels for a long time. And then more specifically, what are the urban stress factors that cause this continuous chronic stress response? First one is noise. It's everywhere in Singapore, and you cannot really escape it, not even in the parks. Noise is especially all kinds of alarming noises, not like birds singing and things like that, but traffic and loud music, everything. is sensed as a stress in our system, and it raises our blood pressure. Then air pollution. Everybody knows that when you breathe the polluted air, it's toxic for your lungs. It causes an inflammatory reaction in the lungs, and it can lead to respiratory diseases like asthma, but also cardiovascular diseases, because the pollutants, the small particles get to your bloodstream, and then they cause inflammatory reaction in the blood vessels. Then physical inactivity is actually a stress also, in the sense that because we are not walking, we're not running anywhere, like in the times when we lived in rural areas and nature, we are not using our muscles, and the use of muscles actually produces secreted proteins from the muscles that are beneficial for health and immune system. And if we are physically inactive, the body gets proportionally more fatty, which is not good, because the excess body fat then, it's called obesity in the other ways, and especially the stress makes it to accumulate around the midways, the belly fat. And this is like you are growing a toxic organ to yourself if you have a lot of belly fat. It's associated with a lot of inflammation, low-grade inflammation in the body, and then that is a risk factor for the same diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Then high population density, there's many different things that cause stress. So now at the times of COVID, everybody understands that pathogens spread more easily, but also just having tons of unknown people around you is a psychological stress, because during the evolution, we were only living in smaller communities where we knew everybody very well. Now we're constantly surrounded people. We don't know who they are, how they are they friends or enemies? So this is actually a mental stress. And then also when you have high population density, you have a lot more cars and all these vehicles. Also, you have to constantly be aware of where's the the motorbike coming, the car coming, the people. So it's a lot of direct attention that you have to use in an urban environment. Then light pollution is something that is really plaguing, I would say, especially younger generations, because everybody's constantly on their phones and screens. And so this has disrupted our natural circadian rhythm very, very badly. So the blue light from the screens and phones causes the hormone melatonin that is usually secreted from our brain and makes us sleepy in the evening. This gets disrupted, and we sleep too little, and the sleep quality is poorer. And we even get insomnia, because if we're stressed, that also causes us to wake up. We have cortisol, it's another stress hormone that is secreted. It wakes up us in the the middle of the night or early morning hours. It's hard to go back to sleep. So all this is causing more stress in the body. And then also cortisol is like antagonist for insulin, which is the hormone that puts the glucose molecules from the blood to the cells. So the insulin is not working well. We get insulin resistance, and this is called pre-diabetes and leads to diabetes. So so take care of your sleep. And over hygiene is something that, like I said in the beginning, the immune system, when we were during the evolution, our immune system got the natural exposure and training from the environment. Now environment is very clean. It's too clean. So especially children, they don't get the exposure that they would need from the natural pathogens, and they could train their immune system to recognize which is actually dangerous, which is not. So because of this, we now have much more autoimmune diseases where the immune cells attacking our own cells, and also allergies and asthma, which are against like non-dangerous antigens like pollen. And then more specifically for mental health and why this is so stressful for our mind. like I said, urban environment, we constantly need to use direct attention for different things when we move around there. Everything is built for purpose and intention, and nothing is left for us to imagine. So it's very kind of restrictive environment to be in if you think about your creativity and imagination. And then because of all the advertisements which are everywhere, there's a lot of, they poke our emotions. There's a sense of urgency, expectation, judgment. This is all very tiring mentally. And then in a working life, everybody has a role to play, and imaginary. Now we have the real mask, but like imaginary masks to wear. If you think about yourself where you are at the workplace, you have your work self, and then you go home, you can actually relax. You're the relaxed self. So this kind of switching is also mentally stressful. So this causes a lot of psychological stress and affects the cognitive performance as well, and can lead to mental illness. And then why is natural environment then, what makes it restorative and more like we want to go there to relax? We have this innate feeling, we know automatically that, during the vacation, we all want to go to Bali or somewhere like that. So when we are in nature, it only requires involuntary attention or no attention. We just can be relaxed. There's nothing that would require us raise some expectations or judgments. There's no meaning and purpose in nature. It just is. So we can use our own imagination, creativity, and all this will flourish if we spend more time in nature. And nature also accepts and welcomes us how we are. So we don't have to play any role. We don't have to wear any work mask or anything like this. It will improve people's self-esteem, especially younger people. Social cohesion. This is why a lot of the teamwork things are, companies take people somewhere like on the beaches. It's all in the nature, because when we are in nature, we actually work together much better. And uplifting for mood, and then all these cognitive things, memory, attention, creativity, and then negative effect goes down. So all this is very beneficial, restorative for our mind and for the stress levels and psychological well-being. So in Japan, about 30 years ago, people developed the Shinrin-yoku, which is the so-called forest bathing or nature therapy. And the idea behind this is because the very stressed Japanese businessmen, they were taken to a forest to walk, and they measured like what happens when they walk in the forest versus in an urban street. And they made remarkable discoveries, like how the nature can actually heal and decrease the stress level. So the whole concept of nature therapy was established then to really calm down the stress system, bring back the restorative effects of the parasympathetic nervous system, not the sympathetic, but the parasympathetic. And then this physiological and psychological relaxation actually convert to a lot of medical benefits and improve immune system and so forth. So just to wrap up, the physical health benefits that you can get from with the nature immersion, especially for your cardiovascular and metabolic health, with blood pressure goes down, heart rate, stress hormones, and then the parasympathetic tone increase. And the nice thing is that if you do this every weekend, you have the effect can last for the week. And for the immune system, that's the other really big thing. You can actually have the so-called natural killer cells more active. Those are active in identifying cancerous cells in your body, for example. And the bad inflammatory cells, the number of those goes down. And then, for children's immune system training is very important. And these effects are induced partly by essential oils from plants and trees. And even just there'll be studies done in the city, but by using the same olfactory stimulation, you can get an effect. So some essential, I think Sri Lanka has some nice essential oils that you can use for relaxation. Yeah. Then the mental health benefits, that's just listed here, but you really feel more relaxed and refreshed. You have less anger and negative affect, tension, even depressive symptoms when you spend time in nature. So all kinds of different nature works for this. Different seasons work equally well. If you have any blue there, like water, that can even boost the positive effect. Even short time is good. 5 to 10 minutes is better than nothing, and all age categories benefit. All both sexes benefits, or all sexes benefits, and I don't know how to. What is the you guys grew up in a different world than I did, so so I should say that. Yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. I think a lot of us sitting here think it'd be better go have a walk at McRitchie after tonight. So thank you very much for that. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Miina?
I have one.
Yep, Yolan.
So she mentioned how there's a positive benefit from short-term stress and a lot of issues of chronic stress. But what's really that differentiation? It's like number of hours per day, per week. When does it become chronic?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you heard that, but Yolan is asking, you mentioned that there's differences between, there's a short-term benefits for short-term stress. What is a differentiator between the short-term and long-term stress? So is it the hours of exposure to a stressful environment, or are the other factors involved?
Just want to make sure I'm not working on it.
Is that the question?
Yeah, that's a question.
So short-term stress is there's a clear beginning and clear ending. Like you meet the predator, you fight, and then it's over, right? There's clear ending and beginning and ending, sorry. So chronic stress is something that you just it's constantly there. There's no clear ending. That's why it becomes chronic. It's just constantly on your mind, and most of it, or in your environment, how your body is sensing this stress, like the noise, all this population density, everything that I don't want to repeat my story, but there's no clear ending. I mean, you can sense the difference if you take yourself out of this urban context, out of your work stress, out of your disrupted circadian rhythm. You go and have a month-long vacation. I bet you feel better. That's how you can actually start sensing the stress response in your body again, like it should go. Did that answer your question? I don't hear.
Carol, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so Yolan is smiling and nodding, so I think you've answered his question.
Okay.
So we've got one more question from our side.
Well, I saw a lot of the long-term benefits of having this nature therapy. One of them was cancer preventative building proteins. If I'm mistaken, right? Yeah. What kind of evidence, or how true is that? How is that proven? How is that possible? I guess. Sorry to stop there.
So those studies were done. They extracted some no, I don't remember the name of the compound, but they looked at that. This is done in a cell culture setting, like in a laboratory, where you have these. You can culture cancer cell lines, and then you can look at their how they behave in a dish, and then you can put these things from nature, and they either start to shrink and die, or then just multiply. So you can so this is the but what they did before that, this Japanese group, they actually measured the levels of the numbers of these natural killer cells in people's bloodstream. And they were able to show that these type of cells increase when you spend time in nature, because you are exposed to these like beneficial antigens and pathogens from nature that's naturally train your immune system. And these will help to detect like everything, like this is why actually now during this COVID time, they talk about like if you are in good physical condition, you can boost your immune system, like eating healthy, sleeping enough, all these are the same effects that nature can also provide you. So they all these healthy lifestyle will boost your immune system. So it's the same pathways that are working there. Use your muscles. Yeah. So one part of this, what they wanted to find out, is it just the movement that happens in the nature, in the natural setting, that is different? But the people were also walking in the city setting, but it didn't induce the same effect. But it's this natural relaxation that happens in nature immersion that is part of the bringing all these beneficial effects. But these were real studies that actually measured the cell counts, if you were wondering, and then done in the laboratory in the cell culture dish with that type of cells and cancer cells.
So moving on, our next speaker is Derek Wong. So Derek's presentation is called Lessons and Wisdom from the Art of Archery, which fits in well with his nickname Hawkeye. Derek is a product marketer and entrepreneur. He's had the opportunity to work on consumer brands such as Xbox, League of Legends, and LinkedIn. So take it away, Derek.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for the introduction, Taro, and thanks for the great presentation, Dr. Miina. It's a pleasure and a privilege to present with you today. Ooh. Let me pause for a moment. Whoa. Oh, okay. Don't use arrows? Wonderful. Okay, cool. Well, thank you again so much. And to reiterate what Taro shared, today's presentation I'll be sharing with you today is lessons and wisdom from the lost art of archery. While it is not always lost, it is definitely not forgotten, but hoping to share some of the insights from this amazing sport. But first off, if you would also humor me, let's close our eyes for just a moment. I'd love to take you to a very special place of mine. I'm gonna take you to San Francisco, so many kilometers away, thousands and thousands, and we'll find this very secret place, an archery range, hidden by the shores of Pacifica, where you will find an archery range and giant trees nourished by the ocean mists and the sea salt spray. And as you warm up with your bow and your arrow, you're getting ready to take on the Archer's Trail, a small hiking trail filled with targets along the way. It's the archer's version of an 18-hole golf course. And as you build up your sweat, going from target to target and getting warmed up. And now as we bring ourselves back, you climb up a hill and you encounter this sight, a beautiful forest ahead of you with a target so far away, you can barely see it. It's maybe 70, maybe 80 meters away. And this is probably the farthest shot that you've ever undertaken. And the last time you tried to do this, you ended up losing one of your arrows in the bushes. And as you knock your arrow and get ready, you yell clear to make sure you don't commit involuntary manslaughter with another hunter on the path. And just as you shout clear, you hear a giant scream as an osprey high above echoes its presence, your fellow kindred hunter spirit, also on the hunt. And as soon as you draw back and start aiming through the peep sight, the waves of doubt start flooding your mind. This is far too far, man. Just go a little bit closer. Who are you trying to impress? You're not going to hit it. You're just going to lose another arrow. But you take another deep breath and the voices go silent. You pull back to full draw, counting the heartbeats. And just when it feels perfect enough, you let fly, the arrow flying out faster than the eye can see. And for a second and a half, there's nothing. No silent, no sound, no wind. And then a sudden pop, the sound of the arrow piercing the paper target. You hit it, you hit the target, and it feels great. This is what it feels like to be an archer. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Derek, and as Charles mentioned, I've had a chance to work at some pretty cool companies, mainly in the video game industry. But today, I'm not here to talk about video games or product marketing, entrepreneurship, or else. I get to talk to you guys about my story of pursuing one of my favorite hobbies, archery. And we're going to start first with my journey, and we'll take aim at that. And we'll share some of the lessons that I've learned about this incredible sport that's been around for so many thousands of years. And lastly, I'm going to offer some arrows from my quiver of wisdom, as well as some really terrible archery jokes, as you can tell. So we'll take a first shot at this. I'm sorry, it's going to be a lot of them. Well, it starts off, as you guys might imagine, as a young, impressionable sixth grader watching Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring in year 2001. And that Legolas boy was a pretty awesome person. And I was infatuated with archery. It just so happened that there's a garage sale nearby where I lived, and my brother and I were able to scrap together some change and buy a used bow. This is America, so you can get by with this sort of stuff. And we would start shooting arrows in our backyard, and they get to hay bale, very safe and very smart. And we would shoot from after school for several hours, either until our shoulders were sore or our left forearms, the arm that holds the bow straight, was slapped silly by the bowstring, turning red and bruised. It would be several weeks before we realized we should just put a shin guard on our arm. And I actually didn't start archery as a hobby until way later in 2018. But since then, it's become a huge passion and hobby of mine. And so much to an extent that I now have a hunting license, so I can pursue one of my dreams. I call it the Asian American dream, to be able to hunt a turkey for Thanksgiving, cook it up, cook it for your friends, and then use the leftovers to make porridge for the next morning. But we're on track for that. Beyond that, it's also been a pleasure of mine to share this gift with so many friends and family and loved ones, whether it's at my favorite archery range, or going to new cities, bachelor parties, or even here in Singapore. But I want to share some more things about archery. Because archery by itself is ancient. Nearly every civilization since the dawn of mankind has used archery first as a form of hunting, and later as a form of warfare. And I like to propose that it is because of archery that we befriended our best friends, dogs. So if you think about it, we became friends with dogs because we became excellent hunters, and that's why there's so many different types of hunting dogs. But if you take a look across the images that I selected below, you can recognize Korean archery, ancient Mongolian and Chinese horseback archery, ancient Indian Vedas, and talking with Vishnu's ancient bow, Mesopotamians, Greeks, and Romans, African subcontinent. Archery is human. Archery is also modern. When you think about archery, you think right away of Legolas, perhaps, or Robin Hood, or Ho Yi of the Chinese, the archery god, Rambo, Lara Croft, Katniss Everdeen, Merida, as well as my beloved Hawkeye. But archery still belongs in the modern context and is highly culturally relevant. But for the most part, I can almost guarantee that less than 10 out of all the people listening here have actually fired a real bow. So there's so much more to explore and learn from this deep and ancient sport. But another aspect of archery that I love is how universal it is. In the top left, you'll see one of my favorite pop stars, Zuyu from Twice, and she herself is an avid archer. And yes, when it does hit your hair, it doesn't look it looks really cool, but it definitely alters your shot, so definitely not a bullseye, but a bullseye of another type, if you ask me. In the top right, you'll recognize, you might not recognize them, but it's the Olympic gold medalist archery team from Korea. South Korea and Taiwan, their women are widely regarded as the best Olympic archers in the world. And this is a sport of pure skill, dedication, and practice. Doesn't matter how tall you are, how strong you are, or what disabilities or impairments you might face. As you see the gentleman below from the US Paralympic team, drawing the bow back with a modified mouth grip and using his foot as he's a triple amputee. So as you can see, archery is a truly universally accessible sport that brings out the best in your character. But lastly, something I want to go deeper into is how archery is by itself a philosophy, a way of improving yourself as a person, as well as deepening your understanding of your place in the world. The ancient Stoics treated archery as a way to improve the mind, the body, and the soul. That is not so much hitting the target, but the approach to how you even aim at your target that shows your character as a person. You can see this both in Western society as well as Eastern society, especially with the ancient practice of Kyudo in feudal Japan, where archery is not even a martial sport, but almost a ritual, a meditation, where you spend thousands and thousands of hours practicing the draw, the breathing, the ritual, And it's not so much even hitting the target. In fact, when you hit the target in the art of Kyudo, you're not even supposed to respond. If you make a oof or like a slight smile, that counts as minus points. So definitely a different approach. But there's been numerous books that have also been published. One that I read recently, Zen and the Art of Archery, where it celebrates not even hitting the target, but simply in becoming more close to yourself. That a bow is simply a long piece of wood with a string, and it is the frustration, the trials and tribulations of aiming at the target, learning to still your mind and the doubts that helps you overcome this infinitely frustrating and challenging sport. And this is where I want to go deeper into some of the pieces of wisdom that I've learned along my way. And first is about focus. Focus is a really important word that we hear all the time. And mind you, with all the pieces of, quote, wisdom that I'm sharing, these are not net new. You can find these pieces of wisdom in any book, in any sport, or any sort of literature. But the difference is archery forces you to practice it, that you cannot improve as an archer without applying focus and some of these other pieces of wisdom that I'll share. In this photo, it's me shooting a foam target. As you can see, the target itself is a foam carcass that's been cut in half because it's been shot to smithereens, right? But clearly I haven't hit the black bullseye equivalent, but that was not my goal. I set my focus on hitting the foam target from 20 paces away. And as a novice archer, to me, that was one of the most satisfying things. Focusing means ignoring what's going on in the lanes besides you. It's not looking at the person next to you with the really, really fancy $4,000 carbon fiber limbs. It's knowing you are here to practice your own definition of focus. And I found this to be incredibly helpful in my own career, as well as in life, when you hear so much about what other people are doing, Forbes 30 under 30, or fill in the blank with certain age or career accomplishments. At the end of the day, we're all shooting in our own lane, and it's best to focus. Another aspect is stillness. Stillness of mind, stillness of body, stillness of soul. Many folks have partaken in yoga, and yoga is very much a meditation of the mind, spirit, and body. And for myself, echoing what Dr. Miina shared previously, I treated archery as my own type of meditation where I would have a chance to go deep into nature, to go into these long hikes into the wilderness and shoot at these targets that were exquisitely placed, whether high up on a hill, between two trees, down an embankment, so many different modifications. But with every single shot, it became a process, a routine of quieting my mind, quieting the voices, and understanding that mind and body, mind-muscle connection, and finding that inner stillness. And this is extremely relevant in your day-to-day when you go from waking up in the morning saying, oh my God, I have to check my phone and look at all these emails and all the work notifications I got from, and then suddenly you close it and you realize, this is stillness, a quietness and calm that is so seldomly found in our modern world. And archery has helped me better acquaint myself with stillness, both inner and outer. And the last piece is letting go. Friends of mine know that I have a fascination with paper lanterns. It's the name of my podcast, and something that I love because a paper lantern by itself is so beautiful, but it's going to burn up in your hands unless you let it go. Right? We're going to ignore the impact to the environment when it inevitably falls back to the ground. But in order to appreciate, the individual paper lantern flying up, you have to let it go. And the same notion, archery, if you think about it, is everything leading up to the shot. Another parallel would be in music. Music is the gap between the notes that you hear. And I think the beautiful thing about archery is you can do everything perfect. You can have your stance perfect, your hook around the string, your knock perfectly fletched on. You can put it to the exact same anchor point every single time. You can have the smoothest release. But at that very moment, when you release the arrow from the bowstring from your fingers, it is no longer in your control. There's nothing you can do to stop that arrow unless you have superpowers. But with that in mind, there has to be a moment where you realize, hey, I've done what I can do, and now all I can control is how I react to it. And that's what I love about archery, is it reinforces the notions of stoicism, that you can't control the people, you can't control if there's a freak gust of wind or a sudden bolt of lightning or a random text message from the person next to you, but you can control whether you hit it, you can control how you respond to whether you hit the target or not, and then realize what you can do better to fix it. That's the last piece of archery wisdom that I wanted to share with you. I had plenty more archery puns lined up, but I'll save you from that punishment. But I will say, I do hope that you hit whatever targets that you aim for this year. And then if we were meeting together in person, this would be the time where I would take a bow or take a bow. But I'll pass it back to you all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Derek. That was an incredible exercise of puns. We're very impressed. And don't worry, I'm still here. You may not see me, but you can probably hear my voice. I'm just turning the camera to get ready for our next speaker. But just wanted to see if there's any questions for Derek before we switch over.
Can you give us another pun?
Just out of nowhere?
That's another pun. No pressure.
When you're feeling very hungry, what do you aim at?
The fridge.
No, you still aim at the bull's eye, so you still get your steaks afterwards, but that's
Are you playing darts later?
Oh, I have a question.
Are you going to be playing darts later?
Oh, well, you should definitely message me when and where. I'll try and show up.
Okay, thank you, Hawkeye. Do we have any other questions or pun requests from anybody else?
I have a question. It's Emily. Derek, what is the hardest part of archery, would you say, right? Because I think people let go too fast or they pull back too hard. What's the hardest part?
Yeah, one other piece of, quote, wisdom that I wanted to add in, but I found myself getting confused in explaining it, is learning how to aim. When you're shooting archery, especially before you add on a sight, which is a special tool, which is like a little dot, it is super unintuitive how to aim. Because when you draw the bow and arrow back and the arrow is close to your face, and you look down the arrow straight, there's something called the archer's paradox, where one, your right eye will see one thing, your left eye will see something else, and your brain actually doesn't know where exactly the arrow is in front of your nose. And then combined with that, the ballistic physics or the ballistic dynamics, aerodynamics of the arrow, it'll wobble, right? So basically, when you shoot for the first time, you will have no idea where it goes. And another it sounds very inspirational, but I couldn't weave this one either, was all arrows rise. Meaning, when you shoot it, it goes way higher because it's a parabolic arc. It starts low, it goes high, and then it comes back down, right? So when you're shooting at a close distance, say 5 to 10 meters, it'll go unexpectedly high. So you have to learn how to aim, right? So if you're aiming at something, again, couldn't quite piece the wisdom together, but if you're aiming something very short range, something, quote, not that ambitious, you're actually aiming lower than what you could achieve if you're just aiming straight on. But sometimes if you want to hit a target that's very, very far out, you have to aim higher because, again, that distance, it'll go high and it'll go low, which is what makes archery so cool. Because at the end of the day, you have to make a mistake in order to figure out what to do differently. So I think that's the hardest part about archery. And I saw a question from Sun Letan. Thank you so much for the question. And it reminds me of another pun. So if any of you guys are eager to take a shot with archery, there are a few, there's a few places nearby. So there's one, it's called Salt and Light Archery. They have 2 locations, one in Punggol, the other near NUS, so like Clementi. So not the most accessible, but not too far either. So I think it's maybe $50 for a 1 hour lesson, includes all the equipment. So very, very fun. I do promise I do not get any commissions, but maybe they should make me their brand ambassador as well, because I bought a shirt from them and I wear it to the gym all the time. So I guess I pretend to be a local, I guess.
I have a question.
Yeah, a question in the room. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because just.
I'll repeat the question.
Okay,
I'll just repeat the question.
I was just wondering if you've actually hunted on any animals.
Yeah. So the question is, have I hunted any animals? So unfortunately, I have not yet hunted any animals yet. I discovered archery just a few years ago, and I've been training as an archer, training as a hunter. Before I left California, I did successfully get my California Department of Fish and Wildlife hunting's license. So did my brother, but he's much more of a gun hunter. So they like to say that archery season in the States for hunting season happens earlier on in the year because the probability of hunting an animal with a bow and arrow is actually very, very low. It's a very difficult sport because half of the sport is like getting close to the animal and doing the hunting process. But with guns, it's like, okay, it's a little too easy. So the gun season comes afterwards. But yeah, I think I'd start first with birds and then maybe move up to wild pigs. But beyond that, I don't have an appetite for exotic animals, so I know it's a very taboo subject. But yeah, as a hunter, you learn about responsible wildlife management. Yeah, maybe those woo-woo birds, right? That wake up all of us, right?
We have a question on our side. Yeah, this is Joanna.
Hey, Derek, this is Nikhil. That was a great presentation, but no pun intended, are there any drawbacks to archery? Nikhil from Boxer, just a plug.
Yeah. No, certainly. I think there's a lot of drawbacks, right? I think one is it's not the most accessible sport. I think due to the martial/weapon-ish nature of the sport, it is a little bit intimidating to get started. So that's one. Number two is I think the barrier to entry is not so much facility, but it's also in basic handling and safekeeping. Before you invest in the bow, you probably want to try it out first. So I think there's some levels to, you have to find a coach who has equipment and a location. So that's why I think going to those facilities is the best part. And then going deeper, I think into like the meat of the question, it is not the most community-driven sport. It is a very individualistic sport. So for me, I find it to be very meditative, but also quite lonely because I haven't met too many archery friends, right? And it's not a very common sport. So there's not like archery meetups per se. Another aspect of it is because of the highly individualistic nature of the sport, sometimes the community tends to be very individualistic, like not as sociable or extroverted. So it's a very niche sport, but for me, I interpret it as like, hey, like I can appreciate the personal development and the hobby of it, but then use teaching friends and going on little road trips with friends as a means to connect with folks. And then one last piece is like from a physiological perspective, it does imbalance your body because you're putting a disproportionate amount of strength into your right back muscles and your right arm. So I can do a much heavier right arm bent over dumbbell row with my right side than my left side. So there's small imbalances that occur.
But they're like archery injuries.
Yeah.
Like, people get...
Yeah. One question in the room too. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Another great presentation, but the question was about archery injuries. Yeah, with every sport there are injuries. So a lot of dudes in particular, when you start archery, you're like, I want to draw the heaviest bow. Like give me like a English war bow, or like give me like a crazy hunting bow with like a 30 to 40 kilogram draw weight, right? And if you're not adequately trained, both from a pulling back as well as your skeletal frame to maintain that strength, you can permanently damage your shoulder rotator cuff muscles because those are very sensitive just to like kind of fine tune your elbows and all that. So definitely a lot of injury risk. As well as repeated motion. So a lot of the Korean archers I mentioned beforehand, their competitive window is very small because they literally burn out their shoulders for practicing, again, like extreme, top 1% achievers. So they can burn out their shoulder muscles very quickly. So their competitive window is very short.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you again, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Derek. That speech really hit the mark. We're all quivering in excitement for the next speaker. So we've got my main man, CK Goyal from the Draper Startup House. He's a hospitality professional with 15 years experience in hospitality and sales. And today he's going to be talking about inspiring teams remotely. So take it away, CK.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you, Dr. Miina. Thank you, Derek. It's incredible to be sharing the stage with all of you. I'm so curious to see how everyone's other locations are doing. We have an amazing vibe here, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Everyone's drinking beer, and we have tom yum with brown rice on the house. So anyways, thank you all for coming. I'm extremely honored to be here amongst all of you. Thank you very much, everybody who have joined virtually. My name is CK Goyal. I do not have a presentation, but I will try to woo everybody with a couple of stories. I'm here to talk about how to inspire teams remotely. Of course, it is a work topic, but I'll make it fun, I promise, or I'll try. I'll start by telling you a little story. This story is about a young boy, 5-year-old boy, who was raised as a monk. From the age of 5 till 15, so a total of 10 years, being raised as a monk, completely isolated from the world, completely isolated from family, everyone, spiritual, hardcore training. And after 10 years of somehow graduating, he decided that he wants to venture out in the world, see what he can accomplish, find his passion, see what he needs to do. And imagine after 10 years of completely being isolated, you go into a world, everything was alien to him. Everyone was alien to him. So he tried to find his purpose. A lot of failures he of course encountered during that journey, but he kept on going. One of the main things he was really interested in was people. So he started studying people. He started reading people. He started behaving like people that he never met earlier. He started looking for jobs in a way where he could learn as much as he could because he had no idea about the real world. And while he was doing that, he got better and better, call it luck, call it fate, call it good training. He got really good with people skills that eventually with time, he started managing people, inspiring people. He worked with various 5-star hotels all over the world and various people, I would say, leaders all over the world. And this story still kind of shakes me up. While he was doing that, he also got opportunities in the US, California, managing people, inspiring people, mentoring people, training people. And that little boy was me. And so I was raised as a monk for the first 10 years. Eventually, we created a startup house, another hospitality platform. But here, what we do is more than just a hospitality platform, we also inspire entrepreneurs. We help startups and enable, one of our mission over there is we enable 1 million entrepreneurs. Our goal is by 2030. Of course, COVID has come in, but we're not going to give up and we'll continue. So I've been extremely grateful to be working with your startup house. I'm also a people architect for People Team. People Team helps organization reshape their work culture. What I mean by that is inspiring teams, inspiring individuals in the company to live an empowering lifestyle. Believe it or not, it might surprise you that over 50% of employees all around the world are unsatisfied and uninspired by their work. Of course, your startup house can enable and help startups can do that. But on the other side, with all our other 10 locations, but on the other side, we do need our frontline people. We do need our, whether it's housekeepers, whether it's our tech people, anybody that is actually doing the work. As we speak, in all our locations, there are quite a few people actually there, no matter what time. Some of our locations are 24/7. During COVID, they're still working. How do they stay inspired? And we all, everyone present here, everyone watching, we all are working with teams. Either you're a leader and managing teams, or you're part of a team, doesn't really matter. One of our really important topic for today is that because it is extremely important to me. I found my purpose doing what I did best, and I want to share my knowledge for that. All right, so of course we can go on hours talking about how to inspire people. It will be endless, but keeping track of time, I'll just share 4 points, which will be like the foundation. Number 1 is communication, right? Of course, anyone being in long distance relationship? Yeah. Right? We know how communication goes. Mm-hmm. I never believed in long distance relationship until I started managing people remotely. I realized there is a way. It is effective communication. Now, I didn't come here just to talk about, oh, okay, communication, all right. But it's how to communicate. And So all the remaining points will be connected to communication, but we'll call it their own individual points. So number one is communication. What kind of communication? Lately, most of our work environment is all transactional. You work here, you devote this much time, here's your salary, right? And everybody tries to do their best with work. But communication in a way where we have consideration, we have empathy, really caring about, authentically caring about that person. So that's number one. Number two, and it gets better and better. Number two is virtual calls. How many of us have virtual calls? Always. And we have not evolved to actually do virtual calls. Of course, we used to do it earlier when it was something very important we couldn't avoid. Now everything is a virtual call. And therefore, of course, we can dive into deeper more, but I'll just touch on the highlights. How to do these virtual calls. That's extremely important. I always say, leave your titles aside when you're doing a virtual call. Now, a virtual call can be with 20 people, 30 people. If you actually look, I don't know if you've heard of Simon Sinek? Anyone? Yeah. So there's actually, he on YouTube, you can look him up. He's got a proper call that he does, and he shared it with the world. This is how our virtual call looks like. And it was pretty inspiring that it's not transactional. We actually take care of each other and actually communicate as human beings rather than just transactional. And so that's something that really moved me and I thought I'll share here. Every virtual call should become a team building call. If you're doing it with your team, of course, not with your clients. I would encourage everyone to do a virtual call which has to do with team building. Now, it doesn't have to take hours or even minutes. It's a 30-second, you can do a 30-second virtual call where it relaxes everybody. Instead of everyone being tense, trying to prove something, trying to be right all the time, but a space that is created for everyone, that everyone is inspired to actually be on, rather than energy draining calls. We agree? So I think making it a team building call will be incredible. Apart from all your day-to-day operational calls you can have, you can, like, grateful call. You can do a quick 2-minute, while everyone is sharing their points, share something they're grateful about. Whether it's another team member, whether it's something they saw today, that immediately does something to your psychology that relaxes you, and automatically the vibe, the positivity on the call will shoot up so much more that you will only gain energy from those calls and feel inspired. Right? So one is sharing what you're grateful for. Another example you can do is maybe everybody takes a turn on every call to tell a joke, 2-minute joke. Or a pun, like Derek, right? Immediately everybody started laughing, and that changes the vibe. Instead of, okay, what are you doing today? What are you working on? So I would say grateful, and you can reach out to me as well if you want more ideas. So team building virtual calls, that's the second one. Third is everyone is using the buzzword now, pivoting. Everyone is pivoting, right? So during COVID time, of course, a lot of changes are happening. And that's one of the biggest stress I would say everyone is going through is constant changes. Oh, this is not working, let's try this. And it's not only one organization, I would say 99.9% are going through that. So while going through those changes, I think communication, again, will be extremely important on how those changes are going to be implemented. A lot of times leaders assume that everybody will just follow. According to me, I've helped a couple of organizations to really tackle those implementing changes. Number one, I call it, like a kung fu master. Number one, and I'll tell you why. Number one is what? What changes are we implementing? Number two, anybody, any guesses?
How? Why?
How? And the third one is why. Number two, I think is extremely important. Everybody knows these days. Everybody's an expert at everything, right? Especially in the startup world, everybody is an expert at everything. Everybody knows the what, but it's the how. Knowing your team, understanding their pulse. Again, it's not something that comes easily. It's very easy to do this, but as leaders, we all have to learn these people skills, is how to implement, how to communicate it in such a way that we're not stepping on toes. We have to respect, of course, our colleagues. So implementing how is another really important one, and of course, what. Why are we doing what we're doing? So once those three are communicated to the team that are responsible for those changes, then the changes should be implemented instead of just wham, bam, everybody's like, what happened? So that's the third one. And number four, one of my most important one, any guesses? I'm sure there are many, many more. Tara.
Good coffee.
Good coffee, yeah.
No, I have no idea.
The fourth one is, again, gratefulness. I've always used gratefulness as a #1 opportunity to really achieve what we're achieving. We really underestimate how important gratefulness is to our day-to-day, as Dr. Miina also mentioned, for mental health. I think gratefulness is one of the most important things, apart from being in nature and all of that, to be grateful for everything we have, even our team members. And therefore, whenever we are on these calls, working with one another, I'm grateful for being here with everybody. And once we authentically start implementing these gratefulness into your life, it's a game changer. It's such a small thing, but it changes the game. So these are my four most important things to do to inspire your teams. Whether you have a team or not, you can actually implement this in your lives when you are on calls with a client, with yourself, not with yourself, but when you're on a call. All right. So anybody has any questions? If anybody needs any more tricks and ideas, you can always hit me up.
Yep. Cool. Thank you very much, CK.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do we have any questions here and at the other locations?
I have a question.
Were you really a monk?
Were you really a monk?
Absolutely. For the first 10 years, at the age of 5, I was thinking to share my photo here, but maybe next time on the next Oasis by KrASIA. From the age of 5 till 15.
Wow.
Wearing yellow, shaved head. Not many of my friends know this actually. It's only the friends I grew up with.
Oh, okay. So I actually have a question about the monk.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So you 5 to 15, you're a monk. What made you leave that lifestyle and branch out?
Yeah, at that time I had no idea, right? I was 5 years old. My dad put me into which he thought was best, and I'm very grateful for the experience I got, for the friends I made there. But I had no idea. So at the age of 15, I thought it was just part of, I somehow graduated. Maybe even got kicked out, I don't even know. But I somehow graduated, and then we were put into the normal world. And of course, after 10 years not being with family and everything, so I had no idea what to do. So I followed some of my friends, and I saw, okay, he's doing that. And I tried to follow some footsteps of other people. And I saw how the world started really changing. And so I just did everything I could to learn. And then from there, I started realizing that, okay, I need to make money. I need to find a passion. I need to find something that I can live in this world with. So from there, I started really searching for any kind of work, any kind of job, all of that. Yeah, so just to answer your question, I have no idea, but I just wanted to do something to contribute to how I was trained to find a way out.
Yeah, and I think you can probably focus here, but because there's so many calls recently, and there's like this emotional kind of draining energy from like being on constant series of calls. How do you deal with that fatigue, and how do you, I guess, take a break from that? But you know, like you want to make sure that you're encouraging your team, that you're like, okay, I want to stay connected with you, but how do you do that without getting on calls like every single day?
Yeah, that's such an important question, and I'm sure you want to.
Yeah. So the question, if you didn't hear it, was, how do you? Well, I mean, if you're on a lot of Zoom calls back to back, you might lose a bit of energy, and how do you? How do you deal with the emotional, the emotional drain and the fatigue?
Okay, yeah, I think that's a really important question because everyone is going through that, right? I'm also guilty, or I think everyone goes through that. How I have really dealt with, and also I inspire the teams that I work with. Number one is you have to have very strong discipline. Now, we have not evolved to this kind of lifestyle, and it's here to stay, right? We have to be on more and more calls. We once upon a time thought, oh, working from home would be so cool, but now we're actually getting to realize that, of course, you require a lot of discipline. What I mean by discipline is not just at home, but discipline of all your apps, right? Getting bombarded on Slack, getting bombarded on WhatsApp, getting bombarded on all your social media messengers, it's the Notion and Trello if you use that, emails, right? And then you have iMessages I use sometimes for my California friends. And so it will be more and more. So we have to have extreme discipline on knowing when to use your phone, number one. Number two, about the calls. Now, I have personally started even communicating with the team that if we can deal with this by email, right? It's a little old school, but it does relieve, because everything, we have not evolved to that level yet where everything has to be a call. But if it can be done by email, where it's the moment you see it, you know it can wait, or it needs to be dealt with immediately. So that would be my other way of encouraging you is, instead of just jumping on call, even though it is ideal, they say that number one communication is phone call, which I disagree, especially if you have that workload. If there's an agenda, I always choose by the agenda. If that agenda can be dealt by email, it will just relieve my time, my stress. If it requires me to jump on a call with a team, yes, I'll do that every time, because I love being with the team, and so that's okay. But if it's just a one-on-one that can be dealt by email, I'll choose that, because you can respond to it with your freedom and your own level of stress. So you decide that, you let them know if it can be done by email me first.
Yes.
I love it.
So it's like, it's already very hard to deal with like disagreements and differences face to face, right? And we're trying to bring this whole thing digital. So from time to time, you will have like things that you need to push for, because the founder said so, or the management has already decided that you need to push this through.
Yeah.
But then you're not physically with the person, you're not physically with the team, and they may not agree with you.
Yeah.
But there is no choice, because that is the final decision, right? So your goal is to push through, but the people that you're trying to push for that change, they just don't work with you.
Right.
How do you then like practically deal with that?
Yeah, no, I love that question too. Just to make sure everyone else got it.
Yeah, so if you didn't hear that question, it was how do you deal with working in a workplace and you have to push through an agenda that you don't necessarily agree with, or you're working with others that may not work with you to meet that agenda. So CK.
Yeah. All right. Well, I love the translation, because I get to think about the answer as well. So it's great. I think there are two things. Number one is personalities. There's always going to be, whether in person or not in person, different personalities. And I've also studied different personality habits, on how to interact with one another and what works with one person, what doesn't work with one person. But one of the most important things, well, two things. Number one is we have underestimated authenticness of our communication. Authentically communicating exactly how you feel, right, with that situation. And again, when I say authentically communicating, we can have disagreements, but our respect level for one another as colleagues or as clients or as even in a relationship, our respect is 10 times higher. So we can have disagreements, but my respect for you is so high that I will let it be. I will let you use your way of doing it. And sometimes just letting go and trusting the other person, whether it's that person with you, letting go of that control, letting that person to actually, because I have so much respect for you, let's do this. Even though I disagree, which is okay, we can have disagreements. And if you put it that way, immediately you feel that, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot, and you let him know very clearly. So authentic communication, and number one, calling it out clearly that disagreements are okay, but I respect you fully. And also it has to come from the other side one day.
I just want to.
It's really hard to give up control sometimes, but sometimes it's trusting. Faith. Sorry.
Just a follow-up question to what he asked. So I'm a big fan of like authentic communication, authenticity, gratitude, and all that. But how do you deal with it when you're surrounded by like a big portion of my office are quite cynical people in general, for lack of better words?
Yeah.
Like if I were to start off with a gratitude round, they'd be like, "What the hell is he doing?" You know, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
In fact, getting them to turn on their videos sometimes, you know, they're not very happy. I can see it on their faces. So how do you have any tricks to, you know, or tips or tricks to how do you break down those kind of barriers and get people to open up?
Oof, that's a really good one too. Maybe make them come to. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I think it's my last question.
I didn't realize this job was going to be so tough. So the question was, you know, so you guys been talking about, you know, bringing the positivity and changing the attitudes. How do you bring that to an office where some of your team members may be a bit cynical? How do you change that behavior and bring about, you know, a bit of change in the attitude and mindset from the get-go? So, CK.
Okay. Well, get them to come to Oasis Learning Nights.
I tried.
Yeah, right. Oh no, I think that's a very valid question. It's good. Again, these questions are not only from this location. It happens every location, every person. And the only way you can actually deal with is where you have control, right? This is beyond your control. You cannot go around changing the world. You could, but you cannot go around changing people's mindsets on certain ways that you are not, right? Again, that comes from the disagreement with respect. But also the only way you can deal with this is owning your own power, owning your own individuality, and having such strong mindset within yourself that you accept what it is and you give your 100% with, you know, what you can. And if you cannot still deal with it, then of course I would say you will have to find something that really inspires you.
Okay. All right. So thank you, CK, for great.
I think we really learned a lot, and so I think for Oasis it's much more of like, you know, human stories, you know, learning from each other, and in that sense, so I run the contributors program, and we try to, you know, uncover opinions from like maybe in education, mental health, even in leadership. So if you're like you're like a founder of a startup and you have some experiences that you want to share, or you're just you know, anyone who, you know, have an idea or like something passion like that, you know, you want to write about, feel free to contact me, and I'll be able to help you with that. Yeah, on Oasis. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, Carol.
Awesome. Thank you, Joanna.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is the climax of tonight. So thank you very much for joining the first ever Learning Nights, brought to you by Oasis by KrASIA and Draper Startup House. And thank you again for our great speakers tonight. So Dr. Miina, who has shot out to catch the last train to who knows where, and Derek Wong, the Hawkeye and Pun Master, and CK Goyal from Draper Startup House, and who's wearing a very nice shirt today. So thank you all, and we'll see you next time.